folks? Landon from Today's Tech, and here we are 4 years into the galaxy of Samsung foldable smartphones with the Z Fold 4. Well, 5 for the category as a whole if you count the Royal Flex Pi, but I would say it's going pretty strong. Samsung is still carrying the industry as a whole, accounting for over 88% of foldable shipments last year, although they might be holding back just a little bit given the lack of genuine competition in the foldable space here in the US at least. So when you look at it from a bird's eye view, foldables are getting good, specifically Samsung's. And the reality is that at this point in the game, there just isn't a boatload of differences between Samsung's foldables and their traditional slab style smartphones. And I mean that in a good way. Come check it out. Okay, so design wise, there aren't any drastic changes. Well, not that there even needed to be. The Fold 3 design was already a solid step up from the Fold 2, so the Fold 4 is largely identical with just a few key outliers. The most obvious being the flatter edges, which I am a big fan of from a design standpoint. I think it exudes an even more executive and premium look and feel. And thankfully, it's not so flat that it's digging into your palm. It's still rounded just a bit on the edges. So it just kind of comfortably sits there, which is especially nice on this guy, given the fact that it's nearly 15% heavier than Samsung's heaviest traditional smartphone. It's kind of a lot of weight for the pinky to handle, but you'll be happy to know that it's a decrease from the Fold 3, which was a decrease from the Fold 2. So they're trending in the right direction. Another key design enhancement is the smaller hinge, which has a totally new construction, which does account for some of the Fold 4's weight loss. It's not a huge difference, but it is noticeable, and it's very firm, just like it was with the Fold 3, but there's something about it that feels a little bit more refined, a little bit more sturdy. And despite the hinge being smaller, the Fold 4 is still the same width as the Fold 3, and that's due to the fact that they've widened the display just a little bit. Now it's still 6.2 inches, just with a slightly wider aspect ratio, so that should help with typing on this Kevin Durant-esque cover display. At least a little bit, but I'm certain Samsung's intent with this slim reaper of a display is to make the phone a one-hander for simple tasks on the cover display and then a two-hander when it's unfolded on the 7.6-inch inner display. If they made the cover display a normal size and aspect ratio, then why would you ever feel the need to unfold the device? You're gonna fall right into what you've been doing for the past however many years of using a traditional style smartphone. So you'll end up using the cover display and not ever actually using the folding display, which is the entire focus of this device. See the point? So I get the complaints, but I also get the other side. And since the dimensions of the outer display have changed, the dimensions of the inner display have changed as well, ever so slightly. So it's a tiny bit shorter and wider than last year, but not really enough to notice. Technically, it does mean that a little bit more of whatever you're watching will get cut off when you crop in to go full screen, but it's a negligible difference from the Fold 3. Now, if this is your first foldable, then that is definitely something that you'll have to get accustomed to. Now, one complaint that I, and I'm sure others have, is the noticeable gap in the display when it's folded shut. You can definitely peer through to the other side, which means that stuff could get in there and potentially cause damage. So definitely something to be mindful of if this is your first foldable. We do also have a slightly thicker camera module, so expect a healthy bit of wobble if you ever use your phone on a flat surface. Essentially, there was nothing really wrong with the Fold 3's design last year, so the Fold 4 is just a slight iteration from that. And as usual, when we don't have a design change, we get new colors. So there's the gray green I have here, which is kind of bluish, you could say. And then beige, which reminds me of Apple's gold iPhone color. And lastly, the same burgundy from the S22 Ultra if you order unlocked from Samsung. Speaking of which, I will say I do wish that Samsung offered bespoke edition Fold 4s. I am very envious of Flip 4 owners. I think that gold frame with the white panels is just mwah. Gorgeous. Now, just like the overall theme of the Fold 4, the displays are slightly refined from last year with just a few notable differences. Like I said, we know that the shape of both displays has changed slightly. They're just a tad wider this year, and the inner folding display is actually more efficient and its perceived brightness is better than last year. Samsung Display was able to boost the transmittance rate for red and blue pixels, which then increases the perceived brightness to the eye. So that's cool. Both displays have no issues outdoors, even without that extra brightness feature we saw introduced on the S22 Ultra's panel. They also removed the metal layer underneath the display and swapped it for plastic, which also made the Fold 4 lighter and the display firmer. And then, bear with me now, by strengthening the dampening sponges, the display can better dissipate outside forces from, say, an S Pen. So all of these layer by layer enhancements make for a better overall experience that might go unnoticed, but is still just as crucial as some other enhancements. Okay, now the 6.2-inch cover display is a bit more durable this year with Gorilla Glass Victus Plus, but I'd still advise grabbing a case. No channel sponsor here, I'm just rocking with the standing S Pen case from Samsung, which is probably the best option in my opinion because you get the S Pen and the kickstand. But in any case, the bezels have shrunk a bit, but you totally cannot tell from these two shots. I'd still say this is arguably the perfect size for being a one-handed display. I think it does a great job at helping you perform quick and easy tasks without having to unfold the display, which is really what draws me more toward the Fold than the Flip. Just the fact that I can get simple yet meaningful work done without having to unfold the display. And if you aren't a tech head, then you may not have even noticed that there's a camera underneath the main display. Yeah, Samsung rearranged the pixels to make it a little bit harder to see than last year. If you look for it, it's there obviously, but they've done a good job at hiding it. Now, both displays are capable of a 120 Hz refresh rate, but this year they're improved to be able to refresh as little as 1 time per second, further improving battery efficiency, of course. They feel just as smooth as ever. I mean, not too much to say there. I know most of us have experienced a 120 Hz refresh rate at some point by now. And the resolution remains unchanged as it has since 2015, I think. 2K seems to be the sweet spot for smartphones, which I can't really complain. It's, you know, it's perfect for my eye. It's a small display. I mean, what can you say? Certainly no complaints on that front, but fun fact, that's not even a setting you can change on the Flip or the Fold. It automatically just runs at full resolution. Okay, now, like I said, the under-display camera has been made to be a tad bit more inconspicuous by rearranging its pixels. It's still only 4 megapixels, but the rearranging of the display pixels has allowed for more light to seep through. And as long as you're in a well-lit environment, these photos are debatably usable. I would say it's pretty solid on video chats too, so that's nice to see. You can actually prop this guy up and take a call this year. The selfie camera on the cover display is still the same 10 megapixel sensor Samsung has been using since 2019, which is kind of lame if you ask me, but with foldables, you have the option of using the rear cameras for selfies, which I highly recommend. You can just tap this cover screen icon to show the preview on the cover display. Then you can just flip it over and tap the selfie button, and then it just moves the whole UI to the cover display, and then you're getting some of the crispiest selfies on the interwebs. This guy's rocking a 50 megapixel main sensor, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 3x telephoto lens, up from 2x last year. And so far, I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing. Images are sharp, colors are vibrant, and dynamic range has worked very well. And in some instances, it's outperforming the S22 Ultra, which is low-key a good and a bad thing at the same time. And typically there's what's known as a day one update, which tended to address camera issues, but I haven't seen an update come through, nor have I seen any bugs that made me feel like an update was needed. So definite round of applause to Samsung on that front. Seems like they're getting better with software updates every year. And as far as software goes, I think that is the story here. The Fold 4 is an absolute powerhouse designed specifically for the productive power user. Starting with the new taskbar that's no longer a labs feature and makes its way to the official software. And it's basically an app dock that shows you your favorite and recently used apps so you can easily switch between them. On top of that, you can start split screening just by dragging an app from the toolbar, or you can access your app launcher from the toolbar and launch apps that way. And if you're not too keen on seeing the taskbar 24/7, but you still want it, then you can just touch and hold and then it goes away. And if you just don't want the taskbar at all, you can still get multitasking shortcuts with swipe gestures. So there's just no shortage of ways to initiate multitasking and be super duper productive on this phone. Okay, so the Fold 4 runs Android 12L, which is the first Samsung to do so. And it's a version of Android optimized basically for non-traditional smartphone displays like the Fold or tablets or even car displays. It just helps the UI take better advantage of the screen real estate. So you'll notice in Facebook, for example, you'll see that the tab icons are on the left side instead of at the top. Now it is up to the developer to take advantage of Android 12L, so you'll notice that not all apps are optimized, but it's nice to see Google making the effort to promote what I would call proper use of screen real estate. And I'm not exactly sure if this is a result of Android 12L or not, but in Chrome, you have the option of opening a new window instead of just a new tab, which opens you up side-by-side Chrome windows, as it should as the device that straddles the line between smartphone and tablet. Another sign of the Fold 4's productivity prowess. Now, it is sad to see that the S Pen is not an S Pen Pro, meaning it doesn't have any of the Bluetooth-enabled features like Air Actions. I actually found out the hard way when I went to take a photo with the cover display and used the S Pen as the shutter button, and nothing happened. I think that's a feature that would have been particularly useful in this case, especially given the fact that this device is pretty unwieldy with one hand. So if you're ever trying to take like a group selfie or even just prop this guy up to take a picture, you're gonna have to rely on the timer, or you can buy a separate S Pen Pro and carry that around in your pocket. There's an idea. And as far as battery life, although it is the same 4,400 milliamp hour cell as last year, I do think that battery life has improved. It's a little too early for me to be talking about screen on time and all that jazz, so definitely you're gonna have to stay tuned for my full review to get those deets. So make sure to get subscribed if you haven't already. But that leads me to mention the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, which was a phenomenal choice to go with by Samsung, given the fact that in my experience, it is outperforming the S22 Ultra in a couple of areas. One is taking photos. It certainly does a better job at processing the photos, and then it's also faster at doing it. Another area I'm seeing improvement is with app switching. Swiping across the bottom to switch between apps, which is something that has always been super buggy in my experience. But on the Fold 4, it is smooth, just as smooth as it is on the iPhone. And overall, I've yet to notice any fluidity or speed hiccups. So it seems like the new SoC is working in perfect harmony with One UI. Oh, and the last thing I want to mention is the speakers on this guy are very loud. Certainly louder than the S22 Ultra. Now, I don't have a decibel meter to show you guys the exact difference, so you'll just have to take my word for it. But just from what I'm hearing, it's definitely louder. There you have it. My first impressions of the Z Fold 4. Certainly meeting my expectations so far, so kudos to Samsung for a solid foldable release this year. And like I said before, this was the year of refinements and tweaks, simply taking a good product and making it a better product. We'll have to see how this guy stands against the test of time, so make sure to get subscribed and turn on notifications so you don't miss my review once I've had some actual time to use this thing. And with that, thanks for supporting the channel by sticking around until the end. Always appreciated. Make sure to like and leave a comment with your thoughts on the Z Fold 4, and I'll see you guys soon. Alrighty, peace and love.